Caitlyn Jenner claims that the reason Rob Kardashian and Kris Jenner's divorce went by smoothly was because of one conversation Caitlyn had with Robert. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to part 24 of Kris and Robert. Kris Jenner is already dating Bruce Jenner, and during their early months of being together, Robert was still very much upset with Kris because of the divorce, the cheating, everything in between. And at this point, after being around for a few months, Bruce was starting to see some of this himself. Specifically, the communication between Kris and Robert was super nasty, and it just seemed like they fucking hated each other because of what was going on. So one day, Bruce asks Kris, "I would like to go to dinner with Robert. How do you feel about that?" And Kris said, "Sounds good. What are you going to talk about?" Bruce said, "I think that if you and I are going to end up together, I want him," meaning Robert, "to know that I can certainly take care of you. We don't need his money, and you are fighting over things that shouldn't be fought over. Why don't we just start over?" And Kris claims that she told Bruce this was a good idea. Later on, Bruce would confirm this story on some Kardashian show that they made where he did an interview talking about it.
He was doing everything to kind of make her life miserable. I saw what was going on from the outside and just said, this is, ridiculous. And so I called Robert up and said, "Hey, let's go to dinner." We met at Hamburger Hamlet on Sunset Boulevard. Just the two of us in a booth in the back. And I basically said to him, "Look, Kris is moving on. Okay, sorry, but she's moving on." I said, "I can take over from here. So let's just make this final signing of the papers as simple as possible." And he did.
I'm crying. I did not realize you guys could see me. Until it was too late, fuck it. So that's what Bruce said about their conversation. Kris says something just a tiny bit different. Kris claims that Bruce told her that when he went and met up with Robert, she didn't learn till later, but Bruce had asked Robert for his blessing to marry Kris. Mind you, he has not proposed to Kris at all yet. Kris says that Bruce also said, kind of what Bruce said, "We don't want you to be in this nightmare of a divorce with you anymore, so let's just call it off. You take your house. We don't want your money. Pay your child support because that's fair, and let's call it a day." And Robert agreed. Though they don't go into detail about what Kris and Robert had been arguing about prior to Bruce having this conversation, I would assume it had something to do with money, specifically because Robert was paying spousal support to Kris. I don't think Robert cared about the child support, that is fair, but the spousal support, like paying her to just live with another man in his house, But luckily, after this conversation, they finalized their divorce, in which Kris claims her lawyer was not happy. She says the next day after that dinner, Kris called her lawyer and said that she was going to give Robert the house and that the divorce was done. But her lawyer, according to Kris, tried to argue about the house and was like, "No, you could have got it. What are you doing?" But Kris insisted that she was just done with the divorce and wanted to move on with her life and wanted it to end peacefully. She also says something interesting here. She said she felt like since she was the one who messed up her marriage, she wanted to be the one to end it peacefully. And she did end it pretty peacefully. Robert was even nice enough to let Bruce, Kris, and the kids all stay at Tower Lane for 6 more months, guys. So into mid-1991, they stayed at the house while they were searching for other houses. That was very nice of Robert. I know some reports claim that he just did that to make sure his kids had a place. And I think that's definitely true, but I also think he really appreciated the conversation between him and Bruce. That Bruce wasn't an asshole like Todd was, Then after 6 months, Kris and Bruce rented a house in Malibu, which is way outside of Beverly Hills, where Kris has been living for the last 15 years at this point. So it was different, but they tried it out. On February 9th, they started to move in to this house in Malibu. Then the next day, on February 10th, 1991, Bruce would propose to Kris. Of course, Kris said yes. She was so excited. And then to make it even better, they got to come home and share the news with all of their kids because it just so happened that weekend, Bruce had his kids as well. So they were all there. They all found out at the same time. All of the kids were excited. Kris notes that even Kourtney was excited. As a fellow older child, I'm happy that Kourtney was excited. So the kids were excited. They were so happy to be officially brother and sister. Sorry, I was getting a call. Officially brother and sister now. And yeah, kids were super pumped. Robert, of course, gave his blessing on the engagement. And I know I've said this before, but truly after Bruce had that conversation with Robert, it really seemed like things were great for them for now. And once these two started becoming friends, becoming cool, of course, that impacted Kris Jenner. The Kardashian kids also say now it's because of the co-parenting that went on between Bruce, Kris, and Robert that they are the way they are with their baby daddies. Specifically, Khloe and Tristan, and Kourtney and Scott. Like, they just try to have a good co-parenting relationship and not involve the kids in any of the drama because of how good that they all co-parented together. Even when Kourtney got engaged to Travis Barker in 2021, whenever she called P, her daughter, to tell her, P was very upset because she was young and her mom's getting engaged and they weren't there. But anyway, whenever she calls her about that, later on Kourtney's reflecting and she's like, I finally became good with Bruce when my dad became good with Bruce. So really this one conversation completely changed the trajectory of the divorce of Kris and Robert. In the next part, we're going to talk about Bruce and Kris getting married, but also Robert moving on himself. And he didn't move on with just anybody, guys. He moved on with his third cousin. His cousin. See y'all in the next one.